Hello again. One of the popular podcasts seems to be, or one of the most popular podcasts seems to be when I talk about planning for trips. So I am in the process of planning and preparing for a trip to Namibia at the moment. So that will be happening later in the year. So I'm still a few months out, and it seems an appropriate time to talk about what I'm doing, the steps I'm taking to get ready, and just making sure that all of my ducks are in a row before I go. So this particular trip is a 100k walk in Namibia. It's organised by EHRA, Elephant Human Relations Aid, in Namibia. Now that's a project I volunteered with before, and it's also a project that I contribute donations to from sales of my wildlife prints. So if you buy a print from me, nominally 10% of what you pay will go to EHRA. And I say nominally because sometimes I just put a bit more in if I can. And the idea is to support what they do. So in brief, there's really two aspects to what they do. One of them is helping elephants and the local people live side by side, because elephants can be very destructive for local infrastructure. So, for example, things like water towers are quite vulnerable to them. If you have solar panel installations, they can be quite vulnerable too. And of course, if you're a local person and you have an animal coming in and routinely trashing where you live, that isn't going to make you too well disposed towards that animal. So this is one of the biggest issues in wildlife conservation, just this where this point of contact occurs between animals that have been living in that area and migrating through those areas for thousands of years, and people who move into new areas for whatever reason and trying to make it habitable. So they've got to grow crops, they've got to have access to water and power and all the usual things. So what EHRA do on that front is to educate local people about how to live with animals. And also one of the things that volunteers will get involved with is building just walls and things like that around infrastructure. So when I was there in December 2019, what we did as a group, and we were the last group of the year, we finished off a double-ringed stone wall. So it was 2 meters high. It was 1 meter when we started. It was 2 meters when we finished. And it was double ring of stones. We would just collect stones from the local area, just rocks that were lying around basically, make cement and put them all together. And then the gap between the two walls, we would just fill with essentially smaller stones, any other odds and ends that were around. And you could get access to inside the rings by quite a small gap that we left, but it was far too small for an elephant to get through, even a baby. And also the reason that the wall was 2 meters high was to stop elephants climbing over the top. And that was built around a water tower that served a lot of the local communities. So if you were to drive past it, it was like it was just on the road in the middle of nowhere, but you would have seen houses here and there near the road, and people selling things occasionally by the roadside. And if you stayed longer, you'd see people walking their animals from one place to another, going past the water tower. So that was a good place for people to just get water. And even while we were building, people were coming up and in their cars or just walking their animals to get water from this particular tower. So that's one aspect. The building, the education of how to live with elephants is another one. And that has gone very well over the years, but it's taken a lot of work by EHRA to make it happen. But recently, now going back a few years, someone was killed by one of the elephants. And this does happen because elephants are very short-sighted and they tend to move around at night. And on this particular occasion, it was two guys. They just local guys. They've been out having a beer, as you do. And one of them was a little bit the worse for wear. And they just bumped into, almost literally, a large elephant, a bull elephant. And the elephant was startled. So a startled animal will tend to either flee or attack. And in the case of the elephant, it attacked. And unfortunately, one of the guys was killed. So this does happen, as I say, from time to time. But the local people, the interesting thing was they understood that it was simply an accident. And they also campaigned to protect the elephant that was identified as having been the cause of this person's death. Now, the local government did want to be seen to be doing something, so this animal was killed. But the local people did what they could to protect it. So that in itself is quite a positive thing, because if they absolutely hated the elephants, they'd be quite happy for that elephant animal to be killed, and maybe several others. So that is one of the marks of the work that EHRA are doing. The other work that they do is to just track the local population. Now, these are African desert elephants. They are more or less the same as the elephants you would see in most parts of Africa, but from time to time, they're regarded as a separate subspecies, and other times they're not. So the thing about them is they look very thin, and that's simply because where they live is very hot, very arid. There's not much in the way of food for them to eat. There is food, but it tends to be plants that have very deep roots and can get down to the water table, which is often a fair way down. The river that we were camped on, where the main camp is located, it is often dry, so it's used as a roadway by a lot of the local people, and also the animals themselves use it as a roadway, a highway to get from A to B. So though the point about this is the elephants have to travel quite a long way, and it's been known for elephants to travel up to 75 kilometers in overnight, which is quite a distance. And what they're doing is looking for food and water, basically. So this is why they tend to move around a lot. And this is another thing that can cause friction between local people and the elephants, and something I hadn't appreciated, and I have spoken about this before. But the elephants are almost regarded as almost supernatural, like the boogeyman, because if you don't understand how they travel, they can just suddenly be there. And, one moment there are no elephants around, the next there's elephants around. And they can be very quiet, particularly considering how big they are. So in addition to just the ignorance of not growing up necessarily with elephants, if you've moved into an area where there are elephants, there's also this kind of supernatural view of them, which just adds more fuel to the fire that can create conflict and make it difficult for people and elephants to live together. So that's basically EHRA. And I'm doing this 100k walk across the desert with them, which is a 25-year, to celebrate the 25th year that EHRA have been in operation. And part of this is to actually track or walk with elephants. That will be part of what we're doing. So that means that I'm going to be spending 5 days doing this walk in quite harsh conditions. So the first thing I'm looking at is just getting myself ready to go. So I've started doing more walking. Where I live, there is a small walk up to a local aerodrome. It's quite steep in places, so that's good. And what I want to do is just build up the strength in my legs, build up my stamina. And the plan is to do a few Ks walking every day at this point, and then I'll gradually extend that and start walking further. And obviously, if I'm doing 100 Ks in 5 days, that's an average of 20 Ks per day. If I can walk 10 Ks comfortably in a fairly sort of uphill environment, because the walk itself is fairly straightforward, not too hilly, not too difficult, and I can do that with weight in my pack, which will be the next step, then I'm pretty confident that I can handle 20 Ks of relatively easy going, even if it's in quite a hot environment. So that's the plan. Right now, I'm just building up slowly, short walks, includes a bit of cardio, a bit of steep uphill, and then I've already worked out some longer routes I can take that are sort of in the 10K kind of area, and they will be a little bit up and down as well. And as I continue to just get my own strength and stamina up, I'll start taking one of my backpacks. It's my main camera bag, actually, but the thing about it is it has these removable partitions in the main bag, so I can take those out and then put weight in there. And it also has hip straps, so it means that weight is on my hips, so going onto my legs, and it's not on my back. So because I have hurt my back on occasion before, and I don't want to just aggravate old injuries that I've had by putting a lot of weight on my shoulders and on my back. So that's something I reckon. If you listen to the podcast about camera bags, that is something that or if you even heard me talk about gear before, that is my top recommendation for any camera bag you have or any gear bag you have, that it has hip straps in addition to shoulder straps. So you just drop that weight is lowered down on your body, and it's much easier for your body to cope with it, and you're less likely to hurt yourself. So that's the plan, and as I say, as that progresses, I'll start putting weight in the pack. Initially, I'll probably just use water bottles, because the reason for doing that is if I overdo it and I get sort of partway through a walk and I'm really starting to struggle with the weight, I've still got to walk back. So it means that I can empty one or more bottles until it's sort of more comfortable weight for me. So it just allows me to keep increasing the weight and the distance that I'm walking and the weight that I'm carrying, but do it in a way that allows my body to adjust and just build up its strength in a natural way. And once I've got past that point, the plan is I've got some actually old bricks around the place here that we used. The previous people had a kind of raised vegetable area, and I'm just looking at these bricks, and I'm pretty sure I can get at least one of them in this backpack, and then that gives me a fairly solid bit of weight. And really the aim is to have at least 10 kilos in my backpack and be able to walk quite comfortably with that over a period of a few hours. And that's what I'm shooting for. So that's the first thing. And then going to Namibia, I need to just sort out visas. I've had a visa before. I think it was on my Australian passport because I'm dual nationality, so Australian and English. So I tend to either pick the passport. If I'm going straight from one place, so from where I live to another place and then back again, I'll just use the passport most appropriate to where I'm living, which in the moment is France. That's my British passport. In fact, not that it makes much difference these days, but that's the one I generally take. And I've just got to look at what visas I need. But visas, I remember from the previous trip, they're sorted out very quickly. But it will just be a tourist visa because I'm only doing the hike. I'm not doing any work, so it's purely a tourist visa. Another aspect of the walk that I'll mention is that it is to raise money for EHRA. So the cost is £2,000. Now that is the total cost, and that goes to them. So that's within Namibia, and that includes my food and things like that. I've still got to pay for accommodation at either end of the trip, but the actual part of it with the HRA is covered in that donation. Now, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day about this, because I have walked a fundraiser before, and that was when I joined a group climbing Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, and that was organised by Inspired Adventures, and that worked slightly differently. So we had to pay for the trip itself. Obviously flights and things are extra, whatever you do, but any accommodation they organise, the cost of the bearers who are with us, the guides, all that kind of stuff, that we paid separately. And then I think we were raising, it was either $4,000 or $5,000 Australian dollars each, and that went directly to UNICEF Australia. So it was definitely split, and as a participant in that trip, we had to commit to raising that money, and Inspired Adventures gave us lots of help on what we could do to raise that money, and but that was the prerequisite, that was the requirement. You had to come up with that money. Now you could just pay it yourself if that's what you wanted to do. That's always an option. I did do the fundraising thing, and I hated it, I'll be honest. I hate asking people for money, and also I don't know about you, but I regularly get asked to donate to different things people are doing. And what I do now, because there's sort of a feeling, or I sometimes feel obliged to donate because it's someone I know. But these days I'll tend to put money into something if it's cause that I would like to support. But if it doesn't really fall within that group, then I'll just won't do it because, people regularly raise money for things. And I know one view on it is that you're essentially paying for them to have a holiday. Now, as I say, the way that the Kilimanjaro climb worked, that wasn't the case. Although you did have the option to raise funds to pay for your own costs. But the precondition, if you did that, was that you had to declare that on the little donation site. So you had to make it very clear to people that you were going to use some of the money to pay for your own costs, but this initial block, 4,000 or 5,000 Aussie dollars, whatever it was going to UNICEF Australia to support their work. So that's sort of how that works. Now, in the one I'm doing, the £2,000 one, to be perfectly honest with you, my intention is to just pay it because I want to support EHRA and I'm keen on doing the walk. I love Namibia. I'm keen to go back there, see more of it, get more photographs of elephants, hopefully, and the other animals. So I'm just going to pay that money myself. So I'm not intending to fundraise at all. And it's part of it for that reason. It's something I'm really inspired to do. And I'm already supporting the project through my artwork. So I don't really want to ask people for money to help me. I'm quite happy for them to buy artwork from me. That will contribute to EHRA directly, but it won't go towards my cost, that £2,000 to do the trip. So that's another aspect of it. So if you are thinking of doing some sort of trip that involves a fundraising element, then just be aware of that. And obviously, if you're going to do that, that's great. But speaking personally, having done that, I don't really intend to do any more fundraising projects where I'm asking people to fund me directly. Okay, so that's the financial part. And the next thing I need to look at is flights and just budget all of those. And also, one of the things I like to do when I'm traveling somewhere that's a bit of a hike is to go and see other things if I'm interested nearby or other people nearby. So I'm just looking at other options because I might go to Etosha or somewhere else in Namibia while I'm there. And may also, I'm kind of keen to go to Victoria Falls again because that was a place that I completely fell in love with when I was there. However, that's just something I've got to look at. But at this planning stage, so I'm still, 4 or 5 months away from the trip. I just need to get those ducks in a row. So the key thing is getting me fit because this will require, it's not arduous. So I've been on tougher walks than this, but I do want to be fit enough to not worry about being able to complete each section of the walk. And obviously there's the admin, there's visas, there's also jabs, inoculations, and I've had a look at what's required, and I don't actually need anything because the inoculations that are recommended I already have because of other travel, but that's another thing to look at. And I always recommend that it's something that is done early, because some inoculations you have to have a gap between them, and the longest one I'm aware of, or certainly that I've had to have is the rabies pre-vaccination, and that's basically a series of 3 jabs that you have, and they have to be 1 month apart. So you have the first one, then you have a month, then you have the second one, and then you have another month, and you do the third one. So that's 2 months you've got to allow to get all of those in. So it is good to just get clear on what's needed well ahead of time so you can schedule them in. It may also be that where you live, they don't have the vaccines. Some of these more specialised vaccines, they won't have them necessarily available. And I've had to pre-order the rabies pre-vaccine and just sort of set that up with the pharmacist that I let him know what I needed when I needed them, and they would just order them for me, and then they were there when I needed them. So you may have to do that kind of thing. Otherwise, I think probably that's more or less it. The other thing I'm kind of running over is clothing. I've got enough clothing for that walk for it not to be an issue, other than I might buy myself another floppy hat. So I like the hats with the brim all the way around, because they just covers your ears and the back of your neck to some extent from the sun. And also the floppy ones you can just throw in a bag, and they're pretty resilient. I've got a really nice Kubra hat, which, if you don't know what that is, if you think of the hat that Harrison Ford wore in the Indiana Jones movies, that sort of a hat, which I really like and is ideal for that kind of walking. But I'm also worried it's going to get flattened on the flight or in transit. So I tend not to use it when I'm flying places, but that's just, again, personal choice. So, and obviously the other thing is camera gear. Now, I've got the gear that I want. I'll be taking the two bodies that I use, so my EOS 5 DS and my EOS 7D Mark II. So the 5DS is a full frame, and that's my primary camera. That's the one that I will do most of my photography on. And that's simply because it gives me a big image to work with, and some of those images will end up in a collection and be available for sale. So I need to make sure that I'm producing the highest quality image that I can. And that's why I tend to use the 5DS for most of that photography. The 7D is not a full frame, and that's my backup body. But what I often do when I'm traveling around with the two cameras is to have my zoom lens on so that's a 100 to 400 mil zoom lens on the EOS 5D. So, because mostly that's the lens I will use, because it gives me a lot of flexibility in how close I want to get into an animal when I'm photographing it. The 7, I tend to put a wide angle zoom on, so I'll tend to use that for wide shots. And of course, the other thing I'll have is my smartphone. And I like to use the smartphone for a couple of things. One is panoramic shots. So if you have most of us will have a smartphone. But if you're not familiar with the panoramic mode, I do recommend that you get familiar with it, because you can produce some good results with those cameras. And the pano mode gives you an unusual, like, you can do very wide photographs. So kind of very much a letterbox or widescreen aspect ratio to those photographs. When I'm using pano mode, I tend to hold the camera up in the sort of portrait configuration, so the longest stage is vertical, and then I'll just sort of pivot round on my waist, so that way I try and keep the top and the bottom of the picture as straight as possible, and that will then give me a reasonable original that I can work from. Some of them can be quite big as well. I generally don't use them for my full-sized artworks, but I will use them for social media. I haven't been doing much in the way of photo books, but there are projects that I've sort of shelved for the time being, but they're quite good for photo books as well. So again, if you're thinking of doing a trip like this, what do you want to, how do you want to share it with people afterwards? Do you want to do a photo book? Is it social media? All of those kinds of things. So you need to be thinking ahead a little bit and decide what camera gear you need, what sized images you need to work from, because obviously if you're just doing social media, you can shoot small JPEGs, which means you can store loads of them on your on the memory card or cards within the camera. I will take my laptop with me as well, and some solid state drives. So I've got two old, they're relatively old now, 1 terabyte drives, and I always take them with me when I go away, because that gives me the end of each day, when I can get onto the laptop, I can just download the photographs from the camera onto the laptop and then copy them onto the solid state drives. And even doing this walk, I won't be using the laptop very much, but my intention is just to do a backup every day. The other advantage I have, both of the cameras that I'm using have 2 memory cards, One's an SD card and the other's a flash drive. And what I do with those is I just copy the photograph. As I shoot the image, I just copy the RAW onto both cards. They're both the same size, and it means that I've instantly got a backup on the cards and the camera. So it does mean that if necessary, and I can't back up anywhere else for a few days, I've still got a backup should something go wrong. I mean, if I lose the camera, I lose the camera. I mean, that's the worst situation, and then I will lose the work if I haven't backed it up. But short of that, it does mean I've got a sort of safety factor there for just keeping the images. And of course, if I'm also photographing on my smartphone, it won't be the same image, obviously, but I've got alternative images I can use, particularly if I do put a book together, if I feel that's something I want to do afterwards, depending on what happens on the trip, it might be worth putting in a book. But if you're thinking about the same kind of trip, then having your camera, if you've got a single body, it's fine, and maybe just one lens, that's also fine. You'll get your work. You can always, I always post-process my images before I use them anyway, if only just to straighten up horizons or just get it's usually getting the lighting right or the colors right, because what you see and what you remember might well be different to what the camera sees and records. So our optical system, our eyes and our brain automatically adjust for different lighting, that kind of thing. The camera doesn't. So, and the camera will try and get the right exposure, but often the saturation will be off as well, and the lighting will be off, and not everything will be lit in the way that you would, or that you remember it. So I always post-process anyway, but it's really important to have the original images backed up somewhere, so I can always go back to the original and rework it, because sometimes I'll produce an image and I might do a certain crop, and then I look at it a few months later and I get a different idea and I just change how I've cropped it. So there are lots of possibilities, obviously with any photography. But doing a trip like this, the key thing to do when you're away, if it's somewhere you're not likely to go back to, or not very often anyway, then you want to have the best possible original image to work from, and then you've got all sorts of possibilities later. So those are the main things that I'm working on at the moment. And what I will do before I go away is just have the cameras serviced and lenses cleaned, because I do tend to be in either dusty environments or wet environments. When I was doing a lot of whale watching photography, one of the issues I had was that I would get corrosion beginning within the camera and the lens. So because it's constant exposure to a saltwater environment, let's say, and by that I really mean spray. And occasionally I would get some spray or some water onto the camera if it was quite rough conditions. And that salt water has a way of finding little places to go where it can be a bit of a nuisance. So again, I would just get the camera serviced at the end of a season, just to make sure I was good to go for whatever I was doing next. Okay, so that for now is what I'm working on, and might do an update from time to time on how it's going and what's going on. But if you've got any questions, you're welcome to drop me a line at graham@ge.photography. So that's Graham, Graham, @ge.photography. That's my email address. Or if there are other things you'd like me to talk about relating to this or any other topic related to photography or wildlife photography, then I'm certainly happy to do my best to answer your questions. And if you're curious about my work, if you haven't seen my work, please have a look at the website. So www.ge.photography should get you there. And I do collections. There's a collection that I've just left running for now. My spring collection for this year, for 2024, is still up. But again, there is other work, and you can see my work on Instagram as well. So that's it for now. Have a great day, whatever you're doing, and I'll speak to you again in the next podcast. Bye for now. Oh, and one thing just before you go, please take a look at the 2026 wildlife calendar. That's available now. It's on the website. There's a link below the description of this podcast episode. So please take a look, and I'll speak to you next time. Bye now.